So if Donald Trump thought he was going to get his former allies, people like Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones, to stop calling him out and shut up and be quiet by calling them, quote, low IQs, they're stupid people, they know it, their families know it, and everyone else knows it too, Donald Trump was mistaken. While those kinds of attacks and threats might still work on members of Congress and might have gotten members of the MAGA sphere to back down in the past, in another sign of just how politically weak he is and how much Trump's support with his own base has weakened, they have barely seemed to flinch. Here's how Alex Jones responded.
At the end of the day, I just feel sorry for him and pray that God touch his heart and soul and free him from the demonic influences that he's under. I mean, it's just that simple. This is a nightmare.
Now, when Alex Jones is the one praying for you to be relieved of your demonic influences, that's next level. Then there's Candace Owens. Here's how she responded. Oh, she said it may be time to put grandpa in a home. That's Candace's comeback. Tucker Carlson seems to be trying to play as statesman in all this and may have sensed that more and more of his followers might view drawing the ire of Trump as a badge of honor. He released his own version of a red hat that says low IQ. I want to bring in political analyst Molly Jong-Fast. She's a host of Fast Politics. She's a New York Times contributing opinion writer. Mark and Ian are still here. Now, again, I don't agree with any of those people on anything. No. They've done despicable things in the political arena. But we are here with Trump as our president because of them. And they are now breaking with him and seeming to revel in it.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. And these are the people who are most responsible for making Donald Trump the nominee in 2016, which I think is really ironic, right? People like Tucker Carlson, who was sort of traditional MAGA, and people like Alex Jones, who was fringe MAGA at that time. And I think that's worth remembering. And here's what I would say. I do not think these people are having a come to Jesus moment. I do not think they are having a moment of conscience. I think, and I would cut out Tucker Carlson because I do believe he is genuinely anti-war. But I think these other people are reflecting the comments and the feeling
their audience.
Of
they're
audience.
Paying subscribers.
Exactly. And so they are trying to serve their audience. And that means that Donald Trump is in more trouble than we think.
Well, I mean, Ian, that's why it's a political story, right? I mean, the front runner for the Republican nomination in 2028 is Tucker Carlson, not Marco Rubio.
Yeah, I look at this and I think, you want to understand Donald Trump, understand the world he came from, right, which is New York in the 1980s, and there were sort of three dominant influences on him. One was real estate, one was the mafia, and one was WWF. And if you understand that, you kind of understand everything about him, right? Because real estate is why he sees everything as about a land acquisition. It's why he talks about Greenland and the Panama Canal and Venezuela, and the mafia is how he sees everything through the lens of how do I intimidate people to be loyal to me? And the WWF was all about sort of one time someone's my ally and friend, and then, oh my God, it's theater, I'm turning on them. And, I look at the fights between Alex Jones and Candace Owens and Donald Trump as basically like WrestleMania 1986. And the thing that and I was actually not a big wrestling fan, but I understood enough about it that at some point in time, the person who dominated those rings and those shows and got all the ratings got old. And the McMahons understood that after a while, Hulk Hogan was kind of no longer the thing that was going to get people to tune in. And I think what's happening now is Donald Trump is like yesterday's news for WrestleMania, and he's going to find out that the circus that put him there is going to want someone else because he just isn't able to command the same level of audience that he used to.
And Mark Elias, I think it's important that we sort of take the right lessons from this, right? I mean, one, it is, as Molly said, not about certain people coming to Jesus, aligning themselves with our warnings for our democracy about Donald Trump. No. Again, let me say that again. That is not why they are newsworthy. Mm-hmm. They're newsworthy because they represent where Alex Jones, Megyn Kelly, and Tucker Carlson, who are all business people, see their followers going, where they will continue to pay to go to live events, to go to conferences, to subscribe to podcasts, to pay for speaking engagements, where they think the energy and the heat map.
WrestleMania.
WrestleMania, exactly. But I think the other piece of it is where MAGA has been successful is in co-opting the culture around the political movement to keep the wrestling thing going. And I think I've started to notice that Democrats seem to be at least aware or cognizant of the importance of keeping an eye not just on people, but on culture. I think the Springsteen concert is really important. I think athletes feeling like there's a permission structure to speak out as they did at the Olympics, as a lot of NBA players did. WNBA players and coaches have been strong through every chapter of our politics. But I wonder what you think the lessons are in this breakup, other than sort of eating popcorn and reveling in its gory nature.
Yeah, I think it's two things. I think, first of all, you pick three people who are the perfect, weather vane of the grifting right wing. So, like, you're right. They are looking where they can turn based on where their audience wants them to go, where the next dollar is to be found, where they can, where they can sell snake oil and lies to the people who follow them. So I think that's part of it. The second is, and since we're giving credit to, despicable right wing figures, I mean, let me shout out Andrew Breitbart, who said that culture is downstream, that politics is downstream of culture, and he was entirely right about that. And I sometimes talk to recording artists or actors or people who are, very famous on the left. And I tell them that, the right wants you to think you are a liability. They want you to think that, coming out because they don't want you to be effective. But the fact is, politics is downstream from culture, and these large cultural figures who have a lot of cachet do lend both a sort of quasi endorsement, but even more importantly, they lend a cool to it all. I mean, when Bruce Springsteen is talking about these things, it is not just the words he is saying, but it is the fact that an iconic music legend is talking about these issues, and he is just an iconic music legend. And so I think that we make a mistake when we cede culture to the right and think that left-wing, or left of center cultural icons, are better off, not speaking out. I think every athlete should speak out. I think every recording artist should speak out. I think every actor should speak out and do their part for standing up for democracy, because we're going to need all of them when we get down to the moments where Donald Trump is using the power of the federal government to try to rig elections, and we need people, the people, to stand up against it.
Let me just say one other thing about this. The proof that the right-wing disinformation around this has worked is I saw an actor and a right-wing athlete saying, I know no one cares what actors think. You know who knows that's not true? Donald Trump. Every time Robert De Niro opens his mouth, he loses his flippin' mind. He loses his mind. Donald Trump is obsessed with whatever anyone famous says about him anywhere. He seems to have some search device. He knows what everyone famous says about him. And the reason, I think the other reason it matters is politics being downstream from culture feels like a map. It's not. It's an emotion. And where Democrats have come up short, it's because they've been right, but they haven't made people feel anything. What culture does is it plugs. I mean, what the Bruce Springsteen concerts do is they make you feel this love for America that people have been feeling like they didn't have anywhere to say it or what to do with it because they don't love the person leading it. And so I think this is so important. I think this could be a regular. I think with the three of you, this has to be a regular conversation leading up to the midterms and the presidential beyond it.